Hey, leaders. Happy Thursday. Welcome, welcome. I know we're about 1 minute ahead of schedule, but I see you guys already kind of meeting and greeting in the chat, which is awesome. At least I see the chats going on YouTube. So thank you for that. Good morning, Diana. And let's see, you are born ready. Oh, I love it. Here's Diana. We were born ready. That's what I'm talking about. And I see Sherry. Hello, Sherry. Yes, and happy Thursday to you too. Baruch, welcome. And let's see who else is in the house. Let's say hello. And yes, glad to have you back, Marie Eve. Good morning, LinkedIn. Let's see, or good afternoon. Thanks, Brian, or good afternoon. Okay, we are going to get going. It is 11 o'clock, at least here where I am in Southern California. It's pretty chilly right this moment, so we're keeping the coat on today. And my assistant told me that it's okay and that I look sophisticated, so we're going with it. Okay, we're going with the coat. But I'm excited to talk about confidence and failure. They really are two of my favorite topics to cover because they're such, when we find kind of freedom, grace, space around those, it makes all of the difference and how and when we're willing to show up. Right? It does not allow us to sell ourselves, our dreams, or our intentions out. And it's such a big deal. So looking forward to the conversation. So welcome. Hi, Aaron and Crystal and Karen and Kimberly and Stacy and Alexandra and Heike and let's see. I don't know. I know I've missed some of you, but welcome. And more of you are joining. But let's get started. So for those of you who are joining for the first time today, briefly, I want to introduce myself. My name is Bribiesca-Hedin. I'm the CEO of Bridgewell Professional Services. We're a strategy execution and leadership development company here in Southern California. I love to put on events like these, and in particular, these free boot camps, because it allows me to bring just some, what I'm confident is some really good thinking and really solid strategies and perspectives to some of the biggest challenges that we face, in the professional world. And really, I hope, right, my intention is that whatever you learn or take away that you can see an application for professionally, you can probably also see an application for personally. Because the fact of the matter is, we have a tendency of getting in our own way in very similar ways, despite the environment or community or circumstance we happen to be in, right? Is that fair? So my background is in management consulting, and I know I've shared that with you if you've been here earlier in the week. And so I've spent a lot of my time and many years partnering with leaders far more senior than me, right, at getting out of their own way, simply so that they can take an idea or intention or roadmap, from that initial concept or thought all the way through to fruition, and all the different roadblocks that would get in the way. And now I focus all of my time, just about all of my time, in working with leaders, either one-on-one or through my groups, to help them do the same thing, but focused on their leadership effectiveness, their careers and career empowerment, how they're able to elevate and empower their teams, and how they're able to create more inclusive environments where everybody has an opportunity to just show up powerfully. And that really ties into what we're going to be talking about today. So I'm going to get into it. We're going to get going. And yeah, definitely personal application as well. Absolutely. That's the intention. So please listen from that perspective. And if I say something that feels like it doesn't land, what I want to invite you to do is put on like that design thinking cap and ask, how would I need to improve on this? What tweak would I need to make this work for me and in my environment? right? Because sometimes we listen to things, and I know I can be very opinionated, listen to things, to listen for where it departs from my existing thinking. And that's just part of what our brains do. So I want you to listen. If you have not been till now, then absolutely start from now and continue that in the environment you're in, to listen from, how can this apply to me? How can this apply here? Or through what lens do I need to see this for this to be effective? Okay, I'm going to offer that up because I find it to be incredibly effective when we're working in the pace of strategy. And again, trying to get people out of their own way and let us show up powerfully. So today, the conversation is all about roadblocks to confidence and how we recover from setbacks. And as I said, I love talking about confidence and failure. Before we get into it, I actually want to hear from you guys briefly. Thank you again. I want to make sure I say this, because get right into the content. And I want to say thank you again. I am receiving your messages. I am reading your messages. I am reading the contents, whether they're in the portal or on any of the other platforms. Thank you so much. I love to see your engagement. I love to see what you guys are taking away, and I love to see your questions. And I'm going to pull a lot of those into the Q&A session that I've added for Saturday. That's a Saturday morning, 9 a.m. Q&A. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm humbled and I'm grateful for the level of engagement, for how many of you are watching this like after hours and going back and taking notes and sending me observations. It's absolutely fantastic, and that's what we're here for. So let's go. As a reminder and the premise, the only thing more important than knowing where you fit in your organization's strategic plan is knowing where they fit into yours. Yes? That's the only thing more important. So that is our premise for the entire week. And I want you to take that away as your premise for the remainder of your career, your professional endeavors, and frankly, your personal endeavors, right? The only thing more important than understanding where you fit in someone or something else's plan is understanding with real clarity around what's most important, how they fit into yours. Okay. So earlier in the week, you were introduced to the mobility quadrant. So you understood what was most important about being able to be in that, fast track box at the upper right corner, ensuring that you're clear on where your organization is going and where you fit in that space, as well as making high quality decisions. You also learned about the career CEO journey, or decision driver journey, which is all about what drives our decisions. And you learned how to start to leverage it to catch where other people and you might be making decisions that simply don't make sense. And that after the fact, you're like, what was I thinking? This is where that lands, and how you're able to apply it in every space or place. Then we went on to talk about enacted priorities, so that you understand what's required for role mastery, right? And role mastery meaning what actually moves the needle in your environment, what actually elicits success and influence and results in your environment, which is different from what might be on the values posters. It's different than what might be on the job description. Yes. And I'd love to hear from you as I'm going through these, what some of the observations you've continued to make have looked like as these are starting to really, I guess, marinate. Marinate is a good word, right? They're starting to marinate, and you've been sleeping on them for a couple of days. So definitely continue to share your observations. Now, today we're going back into the first pillar, right? There are the three pillars of mastery: self-mastery, role mastery, and leadership goal mastery, which we covered yesterday. And we're going to focus today on self-mastery, because this is where self-confidence, this is where fear of failure, this is where derailing, this is where getting in our own way, this is where that all lives. This is where that all lives. So we're getting into this. Now, I have it that the reason people want confidence is because they want to be able to show up confidently and powerfully in all spaces, in all places, no matter who's in the room. But I definitely want to hear from you guys. But that is how I summarize it. That's how I summarize being able to stay empowered and be empowered, whatever the circumstance happens to be. Yes. Being able to show up confidently, powerfully, no matter who's in the room. Now, just to be clear, confident doesn't mean there's no fear, right? Confident doesn't mean there's no doubt. And I'll touch on that a little bit because we're short on time as always. But it does mean you're willing to have your own back. And that we're going to talk about. So let's go. I want you to just sit for a moment and I want you to rate your self-confidence. You don't need to put it in the chat. You don't need to put it in the chat, but I will tell you what to put in the chat. So take 10 seconds, rate your self-confidence, right? Scale of 1 to 10, 10 being best. How would you rate your self-confidence? So hold on to that score. Now, this is the question I do want you to answer in the chat. What had you give yourself that score? So go ahead and take a moment. Let me know in the chat. You rated your self-confidence, and now I want you to answer what had you give yourself that rating or that score? What had you give yourself that score? Okay, being authentic, I'm comfortable in my own skin. Okay, thanks, Mary, and welcome back. Let's see, and as you guys are typing, I'm looking back at some of your comments. And Kate, thank you for sharing. You're starting your own company, and this is hitting home how important it is to have the mission, value, strategy aligned. Yeah, it is a big aha. And here's the thing about strategy. I know you guys are still typing, but as the more years go by and the more I work in the space, I realize the actual brilliance around strategy is making decisions in advance, making decisions both about the path you're going to take and the paths you've decided not to take. Yes. And I have a whole other, conversations to have around those that we don't have time in this boot camp, but absolutely, absolutely critical. So let's see. Let me go back up to your comments. Owning your own voice in the room. Okay, you gave yourself an 8. Great. And not afraid of the occupants of the room you're in. Great. Come a long way and put a lot of work to learn who I am and what I have to offer. Awesome. Love it. Okay, imposter syndrome. So imposter syndrome, or that imposter experience. I don't like to call it a syndrome because I think it's just part of the human experience. But that imposter experience is can really inform how you rate your own self-confidence. Let's see, not being afraid of what others think, thinking through how I feel, generally speaking, reflecting on certain situations. Oh, I love this. Tanya, I don't feel inferior to anyone. I may not know what they know, but I can learn. Absolutely. Absolutely. Let's see. Oh, I love this. Kimberly, I sang in front of a crowd and I bombed completely, but everyone in the crowd complimented my bravery. I was 7. I've learned to be confident regardless of success. Yes. And we're going to talk about that today. And it looks like a lot of you have been. So Karen, the older I've gotten, the less fear I have of failure. Yeah. Knowing my decisions will take me into action. Thank you, Diana. Okay. This is so good. And I understand for some of you, it fluctuates from a 5 to an 8, trying to let go of past experiences. Got it. Okay. So the most common answer I receive when I ask people, how did you come up with the rating you gave yourself, right? What had you give yourself that rating for how you would rate your self-confidence? The most common answer I get is some version of it depends, right? Does that apply to you? Go ahead and raise your hand or give me a yes in the chat. Is there a certain amount of it depends component to how confident you feel in one situation or another? Is there a certain amount of it depends, right, on the circumstance, the context, the domain, all of that good stuff? Yeah, thanks, that line. Yes. And that's the case for a lot of people. In fact, We're going to talk about that as well. And I see a lot of yeses. For some, it's a no. Okay. So for some, there's a no. For most, it's a yes. Right? For most, it's a yes. There's one level of confidence, right? When you walk into the room and you have a certain level of certainty, comfort, familiarity, perceived agency, right? And then there's another level of confidence that might show up, pardon me, if you're being challenged, right? If certain people are in the room who aren't necessarily, as I said earlier in the week, trying to catch you winning, if you have expertise around the domain or don't, all of those things. So it is, and we have folks on both sides here, but now I'm going to address that side where your confidence dissipates depending on the circumstance, right? That's where we're going to go today. So I want to distinguish circumstantial confidence from real self-confidence. So when your confidence is around how prepared you are, because we got this question yesterday when we were at the, I think it was in the how to say it section bonus last night, but when it comes from how prepared you are and your tendency to over prepare, when it comes from certainty about what's going to happen, when it comes from past experience, because you've been there and done that before, like I know how to ride a bike and I know I can do it again. I know how to pour a cup of water. I know I can do it again. I know how to, create a PowerPoint deck. I know I can do it again. So there's circumstantial confidence that comes from the past. It comes from what you already have evidence that you've been able to do. Yeah. Hopefully that makes sense. And here's the thing, circumstantial confidence is magnificent. We want circumstantial confidence because that means that we've amassed a lot of wisdom and learning and experience and background and perspective as a result of our own lived experiences, right? Our own understanding in different spaces and all of those good things we've tried and learned. So that's where circumstantial confidence lives. And then I want to take it to the flip side, because here's what happens. When you only feel confident, those areas or moments of time or environments where you know what's going to happen, people are behaving appropriately and responding the way we would certainly hope they respond. People are inclusive and respectful. People are responding in kind and engaged and willing to catch us winning, right? If we're only able to show up powerfully and effectively when all those things are in place, right? When it's our domain, when we're one of the people in the room who kind of knows the most, when we know everyone else is kind of on our side, or primarily we have support for our ideas, then what are we going to do the other 90% of the time, right? I have it that rarely do things go according to plan. And my background, my life has been around planning and executing on strategic priorities, but rarely do things go according to plan. So the real gift is in being able to be with however things are going and not lose your power or your confidence. And that's where real self-confidence comes in, right? Real self-confidence comes in knowing that no matter what shows up, you trust in your ability to figure it out. That no matter what's happening on the other side of the table, you remember what's most important on this side of the table, right? Which is where you are. All of those things. So I want you to start to distinguish those, because I want you to connect for a moment about where you lose confidence, right? Those environments or moments or situations that inspire, you might want to call it fear in you, that inspire self-doubt. Now, you can have real self-confidence and still feel fear and self-doubt, right? And I'm going to help you understand that distinction a little bit more. But the bottom line is that when you have real self-confidence, you do not turn a setback, a disappointment, totally bombing in front of a room of people, and your colleagues being publicly, professionally embarrassed or humiliated. You don't turn that into a death sentence for your self-esteem. You see the difference? It is a setback. Of course, it's disappointing. Of course, it's embarrassing. You might be thinking, what? Well, how could it have gone so wrong? But we don't turn it into a death sentence for our self-esteem. And in fact, it's that relationship to ourselves, to how we're going to, unfortunately, think about, judge ourselves, and the things we're going to say to ourselves about the setback that often keeps us from playing big. Because the idea is, if I mess it up, I'm going to feel like a total jackass. But not only am I going to feel that way temporarily, right? Not only am I going to feel that way temporarily, but I'm going to make it an indictment against me being up to big things. So I'm going to go on to that. But here's what we do for confidence, right? Because of our aversion to failure, because of our aversion to uncertainty, instead of focusing on what matters most, right, and what we want that outcome to look like, we're trying to pad the circumstance, right? And you guys give me a yes in the chat if any of these feel familiar or apply to you, past or present. You over-prepare. You collect credentials. Right? At first, you're like, okay, I'm going to get a college degree because, that's what the industry demands. And then all of a sudden you're thinking, well, gosh, I have a college degree, but I actually don't feel any more confident, right? I don't feel confident, so I'm going to go ahead and get the graduate degree. Then we get the graduate degree and you're like, well, I still don't feel confident. Let me go ahead and get the certificate, or let me go ahead and get the PhD. Yeah. All of those things. And it's not that there's a problem with pursuing any of those accomplishments, but see, the perspective that we're pursuing it from here is you want the accomplishment to prove that you're worthy. Yeah. As opposed to you pursuing the accomplishment because it's worthy. Very big difference, you guys. So, don't try to fool yourselves. Know when you're pursuing an accomplishment because it's worthy, or because, obviously it's a standard. We're always amassing skills and trying to learn and making sure that we're at the forefront of whatever our industry is, right? We're that pursuit of excellence. Got it. That is one camp. But when you're pursuing that credential to prove that you are somehow worthy of respect, esteem, opportunities, etc., very different. So don't try to fool yourself. And the reason I say it this way is because it doesn't matter how many of these you amass. Doesn't matter how many certificates and, attaboys and attagirls and good jobs and gold stickers you amass. The experience is very temporary, if at all. And what I mean by that is that you can find that you did all the things, you got all the letters after your name, you went after all of the publications and the certifications and awards that you could. And now you're on the other side of that and you're like, oh, shoot, I don't actually feel any more confident. So a lot of the people I work with at some point, many are senior leaders, but not everyone is. But here's the thing, no matter where they are on that career spectrum, there was this false belief or this myth that when they get to this certain level, when they achieve this certain accomplishment, when they have this certain result, then they're going to feel confident. Does that resonate with you guys? Does that resonate? That when I get to this, then I'm going to feel confident. That's it. That's all that's missing. I just don't feel confident now because I don't have this expertise, or I don't know that, or that's missing. And right. But what happens when we're on the other side and we now have it? Then we realize the answer was never there. And the reason the answer was never there is because you can't take external action to address an internal struggle. That's not how that works. That is like dropping your keys in the garage, where it's dark and messy, and looking for them in the driveway because it's more convenient and well lit. What kind of sense does that make? You wouldn't do that because that's not where you're going to find what you're looking for. And yet we do this over and over and over again when it comes to our careers and our lives, right? We put on bravado to cover our low self-esteem or lack of confidence. We don't take chances and then try to wag the dog by making up reasons why we didn't go for the job, request the contact, request the informational interviews, raise our hands, right? We try to make kind of backwards logic reasons for why we didn't go for it, where in fact the only reason we didn't go for it is because we still didn't feel confident, but worse yet, potentially, because we were afraid of what we were going to think about ourselves if we missed the mark. Can you imagine hijacking your own results, hijacking your own future, limiting the impact that you can make because you're afraid of what you're going to say to yourself, of like what the inner mean kids in your head are going to have to say about it? Now, look, we're always going to have the inner mean kid, right, in our heads, and they're along for the ride, and that's okay. I liken this to, like, when you go to a restaurant, do you love everything that's on the menu? No, probably not. Right, probably not. There are probably a good 30, 50, 70% of the things on the menu you would never order or that you downright despise. And yet you can let them be on the menu and simply not order them. You cannot indulge them. And those moments where you do order them and those thoughts pop up, those critiques pop up, that inner critic is really loud, you see it for what it is. Oh, it's just something on the menu. They brought it to me by accident. I don't need to eat all of it. I could take a taste and send it back. I know that's a silly analogy, but I hope that makes sense. I really hope that makes sense. But the things we do because we want to feel confident, because we don't like the discomfort of uncertainty and the possibility of failure, the extents to which we will go are just incredible. Right? We will do everything we can to avoid uncertainty and to avoid risk. But what do? You guys go ahead and answer in the chat. What is the byproduct of avoiding uncertainty and risk? What is the byproduct of avoiding uncertainty and risk? So while you guys are thinking about that, I'm going to go on because I now realize we only have like 5 minutes in the official 30-minute time. So clearly we're going to go over a few minutes, but I promise it's going to be worthwhile. But here's like the way I like to offer up our perspective, right, on failure and setbacks. And yeah, I see you guys. When you allow your fear of failure, fear of looking stupid, the fact that you don't have uncertainty, what will people say? What will I say? Right? You miss opportunities. You stagnate. Absolutely. You don't really grow. There's nothing to bump up against. So you don't grow. You stay in the same little shell. Yeah? Yeah, if you never try, the answer will always be no. I love that so much. I love that so much. And then, of course, there's that feeling of what if I had? What if I had, right? That regret, that doubt. So I want to talk to you about a frame of reference I invite you to take on. See, when it comes to our confidence, when it comes to our careers, really when it comes to our lives, we have it as though we are the egg. Yeah? We're an egg, meaning that egg, as you know, you drop it on the floor and it splatters all over the place. It's never going to be whole again. You can't undo that. It will never be the egg it was before. Right? It is irreparably changed and damaged, and unless it's broken in the pan, not for the better. Yes. And so we have it that's who we are, that's what our self-esteem is about. But I want to offer up that we're really the ball. And see, the ball is amazing because the ball, it looks very much like an egg, but you can bash the ball with a club over and over again. It can hit the pavement. It can bounce all over the place, go in every different wrong direction. It can be sunk in a lake and be ready to play again the next day. You guys see that? You are not the egg, but you may be treating your career and yourself as though you are. You are not the egg. You are the ball. You're always ready to come back and play another day. You don't make final consequences out of a temporary setback or disappointment. Yes? Big difference in our approach. And the biggest mistake, the absolute biggest mistake that people make is allowing a setback or a failure or a disappointment or a rejection or anything else to become an indictment on you, by you. But I was talking about that self-talk where you're going to use that against yourself to then say, see, you shouldn't be up to good things. You fool, you shouldn't have raised your hand. Who did you think you were to go after that? And here's the thing. We all have that inner critic in our heads, but you also have the other side. Everyone has that inner coach in there as well. And you know how I know this without a doubt? Because when I ask you or invite you to give recommendations and advice and perspective to one another, you guys are brilliant. You guys are brilliant. You know when the inner critic shows up? When we start ruminating on, yeah, but remember how I lost the spelling bee in 4th grade and I cried in front of the whole class? And it starts hearkening back to all the silly things, the big and the little, from the time you have memory, and reminding you of your fallibility. So what? No one said you were supposed to be infallible. But this is the biggest mistake. And this is the reason we struggle with setbacks. Allowing a setback, like some temporary disappointment or someone saying no, to be what gets in the way of your growth, your progress, your learning, your contribution, the legacy you're trying to create, the impact you're trying to have. You guys with me? I want you to notice how little, how small we play when we're playing that game, when we're playing the game of not being embarrassed. Oh no, I don't want to be embarrassed. What will they say about me? This is why it's so darned important, right? Let me go back here. Oh, there it is. Sorry, you guys, am I making you dizzy with that? This is why it is so important to be making decisions out of purpose. Because the first thing to fall apart when we're making decisions trying to look good or trying to get it right, the first thing that's going to fall apart is our ability to show up powerfully. Because 90% of the time, things aren't going to go according to plan. So are you really going to relegate yourself and your life and your results and your impact to live in that 10%? Are you kidding? Of course not. But I want you to see it through this lens. Because often we don't notice, we don't recognize what it is that's driving those decisions, right? We don't notice what's driving those decisions. Okay, I'm going to go on. Let me go back to where we were. So I want to introduce this perspective that failure is not an indictment on your qualities as a leader or as an individual. It is not an indictment against you, no matter how much you want to make it so, right? Just like other people's attitudes towards you has very little to do with you and more to do with them, no matter how much you want to make it so, right? No matter how much you want to make it so. Failure is not an indictment on your qualities as a human being. It is an invitation to get strategic. It is an invitation to regroup, to put on your scientist cap and distinguish and assess, right? From a very intelligent spot, not a reactive spot, like, got it. That didn't work. Right? And I'm disappointed and I'm embarrassed and humiliated, maybe curl up in the fetal position for a couple of days, but then you come back and you're like, all right, that didn't work. Okay. What did work? Right? So I always invite you to start with what works, right? What worked, because we have a way of overlooking that and diminishing it. Start with what works. What did work? Start with what you know. What do I know? And then go to what else might I try next time? What else might I try next time? Because it's not about your ego. It's about your purpose and the results and the impact and the legacy and the contribution and living in the other 90%. It's not about staying safe in the 10%. I love this quote by Nelson Mandela. Do not judge me by my successes. Judge me by how many times I fell down and got back up again. Okay. How will you apply this? You guys, I want to hear from you. I want to hear where this is landing, where this is leaving you. You know, if you are, again, being really honest with yourselves, how much of the time are you living in the 90%, right? Where things aren't going according to plan, but you're still playing full out? How much of the time are you living in the 90%? Where as soon as something starts to not look the way you want it to, you hold back, you pull back. You think, oh, I'll do it tomorrow. Oh, maybe next year. I'll wait and talk to them about it later. And of course, later never comes. So I want to hear from you guys. What are you getting from this conversation, and how are you going to apply this? And what tweak do you have to make for this to apply to you? Maybe it doesn't. Maybe you're a real exception. What tweak do you need to make this apply to you? I want to hear from you guys. Okay, let's see if the chat is a little slow on my end. But let me look back at some of your challenges. Yes, I love this quote too, Kimberly. I haven't failed 1,000 times. I just found 1,000 ways that it didn't work. Yep, that's exactly right. And Karen, yeah, it's so powerful. You know, we get so significant about failure and setbacks that when something goes wrong, we're like, oh my God, that's it. Like this is all that's going to have been written about me. This is the title of my life's book. When in reality, it wasn't even a footnote in the appendix. Does that resonate, you guys? In reality, it wasn't even a footnote in the appendix, which is why we can so often see a public figure have a humiliating or awful moment and then literally shrink into oblivion. And then you can have another public figure have an equally or potentially even worse public humiliation or setback or experience and be back at it the next week. Yeah, they know that they're the ball. They know that the setback is just a footnote in the appendix. Okay, let me go down to the new comments. Okay, good. Just inspired you to encourage, motivated to send that email you've been stalling on to ask for that meeting. Okay, even though the person already told me to send it to them. That's so, aren't we funny? Someone actually opens the door for us and we don't walk in. All right. I'm all about pushing the door in, but sometimes someone's holding it open for us, but we're so afraid we're going to trip after we walk in that we won't do it. We won't do it. Let's see. Takeaways: fail fast, move on to the next objective. Yeah. Or stay with the same objective and figure out how to fail new. Figure out how to fail the next time. Let's see. I will actively silence my inner critic. Yes. And I'll be honest, this takes a while to like diffuse the power that your inner critic might have, because your inner critic is like judge and jury and executioner, right? And they remember all the moments, all the setbacks, all the soft spots, and all of those come bubbling up. Let's see. Going back. Okay. Setback is a footnote in the appendix. So good. Yes, it really is. It really is. I like, oh, where are we? I like fail forward. Yes. And here's the thing. I talk about failing right and failing wrong. And the only way to truly fail, which is what I call failing wrong, is to not take it on in the first place, to not try because you're afraid of how you're going to talk to yourself if you screw it up and if you fail. That's it. But can you imagine? Can you imagine looking back on your life, all the scary things you've already done and now are on the other side of? Had you decided not to do them? I mean, folks, we wouldn't be here if people didn't do scary things, because how scary is parenthood? Yes? How scary is parenthood and being responsible, not just for ourselves when we still feel like, what am I doing? But for another human being. So if we weren't willing and able and equipped to take on difficult things, we wouldn't be here. And we certainly wouldn't be engaging in a conversation on getting strategic and getting promoted in our professional lives, knowing that it applies to our personal lives as well. Let's see. And what, oh, I just lost it. There we go. My mentor once told me, you never fail because you always learn from what prevented progress. Absolutely. And that's the thing about failing right. When you fail right, you went in and you played full out, you put yourself on the line, you fell, got a bunch of bumps and bruises, you learned something about what did work, didn't work, developed some grit, right? And commitment within yourself. And then you got up and you got ready to do it again better the next time. That is failing right. See, when you fail wrong, you don't even get the benefit of learning anything along the way. You don't get the benefit of putting yourself out there, because keep in mind, and I didn't have time to bring this into this conversation. We're already 10 minutes over, but I'm going to get into it anyway. Left to our own devices, our brains really only want three things: to go towards pleasure, away from pain, and to do both of those things, exerting the least effort possible. Can you guys see that? So left to our own devices, our brains will have us on the couch watching Netflix, folks. They will not have us leading towards pleasure, away from pain, exerting the least effort possible to do those two things. That is the 10%. That is living in that 10% where you know exactly what's going to happen. Like when I'm sitting on the couch watching Netflix, I know exactly what's going to happen. And then I can hit the button. You guys know the button you can hit so that it just keeps auto playing and doesn't ask you. You know how it asks you after you've binged watched a few episodes at a time? You can hit that button and just let it go, and you know what's coming. The worst that can happen is you get to the end of the series. That's not why you're here. That's not why you're brilliant. That's not why you have teams and intentions and goals. That's not why you want more for your career. So I want you to let me know, what are you getting out of this conversation? What are you taking away? What's happening over there where you are? If you were to master the ability to quiet that inner critic and let your inner coach, right, and your intentional decision drivers inform what you do next, what would that give you? What would that give you? Okay. Let's see. Dr. Keith, inner critic. Yes, I overtalk my inner critic with positive successes. Yes. So good. Absolutely. You do need to talk back, or at least say, thanks for sharing. I know you're there and I'm on to the thing I'm here to do, right? Because it's about the purpose. You don't even have to win the argument with your inner critic, right? Because you can't really win that argument. They've always got some other dig to throw at you. I love this, Kimberly. Childbirth is terrifying. I've done it 3 times. Me too. 3 times. And yes, it's terrifying, but we can do hard things. So we got to stop acting like we can't. We got to stop pretending that we're the egg when in fact we're the ball. Oh, yes. Talking about the ball, Sava. The harder, what is it? The harder you fall, the higher you bounce. I love it. I love it. Yeah, I'll reflect on all past successes and remember how impossible they felt. They felt impossible, right? Sometimes it feels like it was just a pipe dream. And that's, procrastination, since you bring this up, Crystal, really just comes from our unwillingness to feel the discomfort of the thing, of what we think we're going to feel, right? Whether it's the discomfort of being nervous as you're submitting an application, whether it's the discomfort of receiving a no, a rejection, because, you get all wrapped up and you make it mean something inherently bad about you, as opposed to meaning, not yet, or as opposed to it being a redirection to something else, right? And I forgot where I saw or read this, but that rejection, you just change the letters and add the dir in there. It's just redirection. So it's your choice and how you want it to land, right? If rejection is a bad word to you, think about it as redirection. I'm going to ask 10 people, 9 of them might say no, but one of them's going to say yes, right? Because that's how that works. Or I might ask 99 and they'll get 99 no's and somebody's going to say yes. But see, you're willing to get the 99 no's when you're up to big things. And you're willing to get 99 no's when the no's don't mean anything inherent about you, about your qualities as a human being, your value, your worth, all those things, all those ways we mess with ourselves, right? All those ways we mess with ourselves. Okay. So I'm going to keep going through your questions, but I want to let you know tomorrow, day 5, we're talking about staying strategic and the roadblocks to that. Talking about staying strategic and the roadblocks to that. And here's information on Saturday morning's Q&A. Whether you're already enrolled in the bootcamp or not, you can go ahead and, grab this, take a picture of it with your phone, whatever the case is, and sign up for the Saturday morning Q&A. Sign up for the Q&A. I'm going to invite you, even in the portal, I'm going to invite you to join at the link as opposed to watch it in the portal, because then I can't see all of your comments. So you guys in the portal watching right now, it was one too many platforms for me to manage at once. So I'm not looking at those comments in real time, but I'm reading them afterwards. Right? So if you have questions for me, you can drop them in there. Let's see. Lala, skills are going to be needed, especially as you go higher. Yes. Kudos and recognitions may be less and less. Or frankly, where you go into, you delve into bigger and more difficult conversations, right? Not even going higher, but when you want to live more intentionally into a purpose, into something you want to see come to fruition that doesn't exist yet, it gets more and more uncomfortable, you guys. It gets more uncomfortable. Okay, so good. Let's see. Yep, you never know what you can do until you do it. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, I love that. And this really, whether folks are spiritual or not, if you can think about and connect with, was I really only put here for the 10% where I can control everything and know what everything's going to look like and that everybody's going to agree and be happy with me and give me the atta girl? Or was I put here and are all of my gifts better put to use in the full span of 100%, including the discomfort, the uncertainty, the risk, the failure, the learning, the growing, all of that. Okay, you guys, we're way over time. I'm looking at the time right now. It's 11:47 where I am. So I'm going to wrap it up for now. Please keep sending me your questions. Thank you for engaging. Thank you for taking this on. Take this to your teams. See what's happening within your teams, within your organizations, within your ERGs. Where are you guys playing small because you're afraid of what somebody else is going to say, or worse yet, what you're going to say, right? The worst that can happen is you actually learned something and did it better next time. Yes? That's really the worst that can happen. Okay, you guys. I've loved being with you today. Yet again, I'm looking forward to day 5 tomorrow. Go out there and lead. I'll see you then.